Welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast for small business owners who want to leave social media without losing all their clients.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome back to Off the Grid, a podcast about running a creative small business without social media. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and this is season 5 of the podcast. I am so thrilled to be back here on the air with you at the start of 2025 with a little fun experimental season. This week on the show, we are doing 5 episodes in 5 days for season 5 of Off the Grid. I shared a little trailer about why we're doing that and how it's going to work yesterday. So if you haven't heard that yet, I might recommend taking 10 minutes to tune in before you listen to this episode, but also you might just be here to learn about email marketing. And that is what you're going to get, my friend, because today on the show, I am so thrilled to be joined by Grummert of Duett to talk all things email marketing. We really get into it with advice for beginners who are setting up their very first email list and some really nuanced email marketing techniques that folks who are years into business can begin to implement to see even more success from the emails and newsletters they send. So this conversation spans all skill levels. It doesn't assume you know anything about email, but it also doesn't assume that you don't already know a ton about email. And I was just so grateful to Allea for joining me and bringing all that wisdom to the show. As a tiny reminder before we dive into the conversation, if you're new around here, you might want to go grab the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit, which is a totally free resource that I've created just for you. It includes my 5-step plan to leave any social platform, my very popular list of 100 ways to share your work and life without social media, and a creative marketing experiments database to help you plan seasonal marketing experiments and assess what might be the best suited marketing methods and channels for your business. So you can get all of that for free at offthegrid.fun/toolkit or at the link in the show notes. And also, if you've been around here for a while and you love Off the Grid and you want even more community support and classes and learnings from me, I would love to invite you to join the Interweb, which is our annual membership for small business owners, creatives, freelancers, writers, artists, authors, dancers, healers, whatever you might do if you are sharing your work online and trying to make some money in the process. The Interweb is for you, and doors to the membership are open this week only. So they were closed all fall. They will close again on Sunday, January 12th. But I'd love for you to head to the show notes and learn more about it and come on in before our winter business retreat on Monday, January 13th, where we will be gathering to set some intentions for the year ahead in our work and our life and our business. And I just can't wait to gather with everyone. And I hope that you will be there. So head to the show notes to learn more about the Interweb or to get the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit. And all of that shared, now let's dive into my conversation about email marketing with Allea Grummert. So today on the show, I am incredibly excited to be joined by an amazing guest who knows way more about email than I do, especially email automations. She is a pro. Allea Grummert is an email marketing strategist and conversion copywriter who helps bloggers and content creators make a long-lasting first impression. She's the owner of Duett with 2 T's, where her team creates automated welcome and nurture sequences that engage readers, build brand loyalty, and optimize conversions for sales and site traffic. Hi, Allea. Welcome to Off the Grid. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh my goodness. I'm just like giddy. I'm like, let's get into it. Let's talk.
Today, you are joining us to talk about 5 reasons why email is such an important foundational marketing channel for literally any business, but especially any online business. Like, it's so crucial. It's the first thing I always tell people to do. And then their typical question to me after that is like, okay, Amelia, you said start an email list, but like how, why, where, when, what do I do? So
Yeah.
that's what you're here to take us through today. And you've got a list of 5 reasons for us why email is so important. So I'm wondering if you could kick us off with your first reason that we cannot ignore email in our marketing strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we cannot understate the fact that email is it's vital because of all of the different changes and algorithms to all of the other platforms. Especially thinking about if TikTok were to disappear, or if Instagram messes with an algorithm, or there's another helpful content update with Google, it's like, oh my goodness, how do I reach my people? And email is the way that you can do that. At any point, I can draft an email. I could do it in 10 minutes, draft an email and hit send, and it will land in the inboxes of the people who say they want my content. And that is just not possible with any other platform.
Yes, absolutely. So our first reason that email is super important is that it's not going anywhere. This is a long-lasting, stable strategy, and it is not determined by algorithms. So we love an algorithm-free marketing strategy around here.
Yeah, I know that at any point I can send an email to my list to drive them really anywhere that I want to send them, whether it is a blog post or a podcast episode or an affiliate link or some sort of promotion. And that kind of control feels really nice in a world where I need to be able to communicate the value of what I'm creating with the people who want it. And what's just awesome about it is that you can also segment your audience so that people who want something get something, and the people who don't want it don't get the email. We actually get to limit the amount of noise that lands in people's inboxes when we think a little bit more strategically about email. Now, think of the opposite, where you're I'm running a promotion, and you're putting it all over Instagram. Well, say you have a ton of people who've already bought it, or a ton of people who aren't interested, and they just have to hear that, or they just have to see it on their feed. Whereas I can run a promotion and exclude people who've already purchased from getting any more follow-up emails. Or if anybody wants to mute the rest of the promotion, they don't have to get those emails either. So it's just, it's not going anywhere for one thing, but it's also just so easy to be able to segment your list and send them exactly what you want.
Yeah, I love this. So I want to talk a little bit more about segmentation in a moment, but I also want to pause with this first reason. Email is algorithm free. It's not going anywhere. And I just want to say a little bit too about how something I think about a lot with email is there are different kind of scales of email, right? We have email, whereas I get in my inbox and I literally write an email to one person. Then we also have email where I have a newsletter list and I send an email once a week or whatnot. And then we also have email that's I do email marketing. I have automated sequences. I am doing promotions. I am building segmented lists and all of that. And something I love about email is that it can scale and grow with you. So when you're first starting your business, maybe you are straight up just sending one-on-one emails hello, friend. I have not talked to you in forever. Here is an email. Did you know I started this business, etc. I love that it can start small with us, but also it can grow over time. So maybe after we send a bunch of one-on-one emails, we start a list where we put all those people in an email software and we start emailing them all together. And then maybe we build in more automations as we go. But what's nice that it's not going anywhere piece is knowing this one person's email, they can grow with us. Their email's not changing, right? I've had the same email address kind of forever.
Yes. With the exception of my junior high Hotmail address, I've had my Gmail since I was in college, and we learned what Gmail was, and I was ooh, fun. And so those folks get to kind of learn and grow with you. I was actually just talking with a client today about how my nurture sequence, my automated nurture sequence, started out as content I was sending out as newsletters and then just repurposing it into this automated sequence. So some of those emails were written October 2019. But some of those emails were written in 2024. And so it's interesting that even as people join my list, they're getting to follow the sequence of content, even as I've grown in my own understanding of email marketing. But all of it matters from beginning to end, and you get to kind of take people on a journey.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. It's we get to grow, people get to grow with us. And I think that actually takes us perfectly into our second reason, or your second reason, why email is such an important marketing channel for online business. And that is that email is fundamental for building long-term relationships. So could you speak a little more to how you use email marketing to cultivate long-term relationships online?
Absolutely. So part of it is just being generous with what you have to share is like, that is what we can offer on our part of the relationship, right? Like I'm sharing something of value. That's why you're even on my email list, right? And it feels a little bit like you're just talking into a void. But part of it is getting used to just being generous with what you know. And like, I know there's a lot of mindset issues when it comes to sending emails. You're like, why would anybody care? Like, but it's like, no, they do care. And because you've already figured out a solution, even if it's just a tiny solution, helps people. Whether it's like how to make a meal in one pot versus making a huge mess in the kitchen, like that is a solution and that's helpful for people. But you can also ask people to reply. And so I have people that reply back to my automated emails for Duett, but actually, I don't know if I told you this, Amelia, that I used to be a personal finance blogger. Did I ever tell you that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. Nothing screams fun at a party like a girl who loves to budget. It was called askallea.com. It's defunct now. There's nothing there. But it was funny because I remember being at Hy-Vee in Lincoln, Nebraska, shopping for cereal. And a friend stopped me and was like asking me about retirement accounts. And I was like, sure, we can do this here. Okay. So eventually I created this blog, but I created a welcome sequence and you set it up one time and people are getting introduced to you in a way that like you are human, you have your story, like you're creating space for them to ask questions. And then get this though, I had strangers from across the world reply back to my emails because they felt like they knew me and they trusted me. And then like money is also like not a light subject to talk about with a stranger.
Yeah,
no. You know? And so this one gal's like, my boyfriend and I just moved into this flat and then I just lost my job. What? I'm just a stranger on the internet, but you feel like you know me. And so by being able to kind of create that on-ramp of getting to know people so that no matter who joins your list at any point gets that introduction, I just think that that's really, really sweet.
Yeah, I love all of these anecdotes that you're sharing, and I'm really grateful for them. I have had similar experiences, maybe not in the Hy-Vee in Lincoln here, but definitely in my past lives in Chicago of people being like, oh, I saw you write about this in your email, and like it was so interesting. Or even, whether they're friends and people I know texting me about something I wrote, or it's like complete strangers replying and landing in my inbox. I think that email does resonate, and sharing our stories in these ways does resonate. And I also just love like pulling back in the thread of what you said before, like when we create a welcome sequence, when we introduce ourselves, we can weave in things we have written years and years ago alongside things we are writing right now. And I think it actually gives us this beautiful self-reflective moment of like, oh, look how my self-understanding has evolved over time. Or as a business owner, like, oh, look at how my understanding of what my customer or client needs has evolved over time. And I think that sometimes, like when I look back at emails that I wrote 5 years ago, for instance, I'm like, oh yeah, people still need to know those fundamental things to get to where I am now. But it's so easy for me now to forget to talk about that stuff because I'm like, that was 5 years ago. Like, don't we all know this? But like, we don't all know this. Just I know this because I've lived those 5 years. There's something really nice about that type of long-term reflection and sustained sharing and relationships.
And when I started out writing like welcome sequences, nurture sequences, most of them were actually in the personal finance space. So I went from being like in the community to serving the community. And what I just heard over and over again is like, yeah, but I already wrote about budgeting. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the people who are coming to you, that's what they're looking for. So while you've written about it and it feels like old news and you'd rather talk about investing, you also need to cater to that large audience who's coming looking for this, and you already have resources. It's kind of like when I work with my food blogging clients, it's like, no one's going to be mad that you sent them your best lasagna recipe, right? Like if it's helpful, just because you've made it before doesn't, we have all of these assumptions that we make about the reader. But like you said, like revisiting the fact that like you have already done that hard work. And even though it was 5 years ago, the way that you crafted it 5 years ago, like my puny little nurture emails that are like 500 words and like maybe like might be helpful in one element, but they're not like massively helpful, like maybe what I create now, like that is still a stepping stone that people have to take. One of my early nurture emails, so after my welcome sequence, is one that's basically like, people need to hear what you have to say. Whatever it is you think is holding you back, like what you have to share is helpful, go share it. And like that email still needs to be in there because anybody who's joining the Duett email list has probably had that question or doubt about themselves at some point.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that like part of our personal journeys is overcoming these moments of self-doubt, is like moving through the fear, is getting to the other side of some of these things. But we can't forget where we started because often our ideal clients and customers are starting in that same place. They're not starting where we are now, they're starting where we were, and we're helping them get to where we and our current client base is now, but we have to take them on that journey. I'm feeling like I should pause us here and actually ask you a super basic question that some listeners may not know. I'm self-reflecting that I have gotten ahead of us. Could you tell people what is a welcome email and what is a nurture sequence?
Yep, I wondered about that too. I'm like, oh, just me and my jargon over here. So I treat a welcome sequence. So it's basically the first week and a half, 2 weeks that somebody's on your list. It could technically be one email. Mine is 6. So it's like, what are these things that if somebody is new to my ecosystem online, what are the most important things that they need to know about me in order to be kind of up to speed, to make sure that they know that they're in the right place? And so I kind of treat it like a brand hub. I'm using air quotes, which I went to school for marketing. So like that's normal for me to think about branding. But I know there's a lot of misconception of like, oh, I need a different welcome sequence for these people and these people and these people. And I'm all like, oh my gosh, we don't have that much time. Like just one, just do one that like, right. If somebody comes in because they're curious about Instant Pot recipes, this is your time to tell them, I also have air fryer recipes, right? Versus just sending them your newsletter. It's like, oh, or maybe you have like an ebook or a cookbook. Yeah. Whatever it is, you're like, these are really important things that people need to know about my brand. And this is when it needs to happen. I exclude anybody who's in the welcome sequence from getting any newsletters. So it really is this like curated, like this is their little incubator. You're like, I will see you on the other side. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then once that's done, the nurture sequence is basically an automated newsletter. You're basically doubling up on your newsletter, one that you created a long time ago and one that you are sending out new now. So for instance, my newsletter, my live one, my new content goes out on Thursdays, whereas my Evergreen Nurture sequence, which I kid you not, like 80 emails in it, goes out every Tuesday. And so what's great is that I can also pause that at any point if I'm running a promotion. But it really I already did the work of writing the email once. So if it can be modified into an evergreen email, I can drop it into that nurture sequence and know that it'll go out to the people who haven't ever received it before.
Wow. Okay. This is blowing my mind because I have always collapsed welcome sequence and nurture sequence in my head. I have like one welcome sequence that does have a few emails and people get that and then they get put on my regular list, but I don't have a separate nurture sequence happening in an ongoing way. So I am already learning so much. Can you just tease out again for me? Like, how do you decide something goes in the nurture sequence? Like, why 2 emails a week? Why like an evergreen nurture sequence and a new newsletter every Thursday? Like, can you just walk me through that maybe a little slower because I'm catching up?
So with the welcome sequence and what to include in it, it's basically like, what do people need to know about me before they start getting my regular newsletters? Like, if that could kind of be your cutoff, whereas the nurture sequences is basically an extension of like your previous content. So just because somebody joined your list tomorrow doesn't mean that they wouldn't want that content that you sent out 2 weeks ago about, X, Y, or Z. So we're just like extending the life of the content, sure. And we're going to be sending traffic back to your website, but it's even just like affiliates. So you're like, oh yeah, these are the 3 major affiliate programs that I always like to promote. And in your nurture sequence, you're like, here's like newsletter, affiliate promo. And you can feel good about it because you're like, look at all the value I'm automatically sending them. And I'm also sending them a newsletter, but also you can sleep at night knowing everybody on my list has heard about, in my case, it's like Food Blogger Pro. Everybody knows about that as a resource because I have told them. Granted, not everybody opens every email, and that's why you can talk about it more than just one time. Or, for instance, even live emails to my current list, I'll talk about like a case study or a client that had a great win. And then I just repurpose that in my nurture sequence. I'm like, why the heck not? If I was brave enough to send it out one time, I can be brave enough to send that out and tell people that they can work with me. And this is how, in a nurture email as well. So it's lengthening the life of the content you've created. It can send automated traffic back to your website. And it's also continuing to shorten that learning curve for your new subscriber between like the content you're sending out now, but maybe the older content that they don't even know exists.
Yeah. Oh, that's so smart. And I have had exactly this problem. So I love this. And I also want to flag that it does feel like one of our more advanced strategies for folks. So if you are just getting started, we would love for you to have a welcome email, please. Make a welcome email so that when everybody joins your list, they get a great welcome email from you. And at this stage, even if you're using, Substack, which I find to be a very basic in its email functionality, you can send a welcome email. Please customize the welcome email they send out when people join your list. If you're using any other email platform, you can likely have your welcome email and then a bit of a welcome sequence where you send a few emails introducing people to this, as you put it, Allie, like the foundational content, like the things that people need to know to even understand like who you are, what you do, how they might work with you, all of that. But then I love that you're also, from there, you're building this nurture sequence with the things that you share over time. Because, I do so much work, like even in the sphere of off the grid, I have a welcome sequence and I have a weekly email. But I literally never, ever, ever email people about past episodes. Like not even a one time. And this is like, we've had over 90 episodes now, or we're hitting 90 soon. And it's like, I don't resurface that content. And I am hearing that I could use a nurture sequence to be like bringing that back more regularly.
Mm-hmm. Especially because, I have clients that run a podcast. And so in their welcome and nurture emails, it's like, okay, now that you've created 400 episodes or whatever they had, it's like, what are the ones that if somebody is new to your world that they need to know about? And it's like, oh, this one on value-based budgeting and this one on a success story with our coaching client. Those are great. Like they don't all have to be podcast episodes, but like if you can handpick or even just like these 3 are really great for beginners or these 3 are really great for advanced, and you're just like, you're curating it for them. I often use the phrase, I'm like, you are your own managing editor. Like you get to be the devil in The Devil Wears Prada. That's a terrible example. Maybe I should go with like a How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days reference. Lana or whatever her name is. Lana. But yeah, you get to say like, this is what I know is important for these people on my list. But also this is what is important to my business. I need to make sure they know I have services or I need them to know I have a product. So like, you don't have to lay down at the mercy of like, I'm afraid to sell to people because they're going to leave. It's like, you are also running a business and you're allowed to tell them about that. So it's a mix of both, right? Like what your people are looking for, but then like they don't always know what they're looking for or what would be helpful for them, right? It's attributed to Mr. Ford. If you ask people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. And he's like, how about I build you a car? It's like, what? So just thinking like, yeah, you have the power in a really good way to be like, welcome to my space. These are all the kind of places you can hang out. Similar to like when I stay at an Airbnb and they've got that little like, fold out binder and it's like, here are all the places in the neighborhood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for you. Thanks for doing that hard work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have one more question about nurture sequences then. So, I kind of think of that binder. One version of it is just a welcome sequence, right? Like it's actually just laying this stuff out for you in the beginning. But then when you're adding things to your nurture sequence, is that a nurture sequence? Like, do you just build that all the time? Are you just like sending emails and evergreening them and dropping them in there? And then people just kind of stay in that sequence forever? Mm-hmm. Do people graduate to your nurture sequence? How does that work?
Yeah, no, my hope is to trap them in there forever and they can never leave. So a couple of things, because not every, if I'm running a promotion, that's me taking a few weeks off of creating general, value-based emails that direct to my blog or whatever. So yeah, eventually there are people who get to the end of the nurture sequence and then they just like, they're done. And then they're just getting my new content, which is great. I wish I could give them like, what's the tassel that you switch when you graduate?
Oh, yeah.
Your graduation cap. You're like, you did it. Congratulations. I could do that. I could just make a very last email being like, this is it. Fly the coop. You're giving me ideas. And I love GIFs, so I'm seeing this very visual. The other thing is that if you're listening to this and you're like, but that's so many more emails than people are used to getting. Here's what I do. I have a separate template that I send out my nurture emails with. And all that's different is basically at the bottom, it says like, just want my new content, or like, you don't want the Tuesday emails. I think I call it the best of Duett, which is funny because it's literally all of Duett. So it's all awesome. Why wouldn't you want it? It's the best. But I came up with that on a whim. I was like, don't want the best of Duett and just want the new content. Click here. And what it does is it adds like a mute tag, and it removes them from the nurture sequence. So people have the option. And then by default, because I'm the managing editor, that's the only one that they can opt out of my automated emails. I do also host these free roundtable kind of email marketing co-working events. You can also opt out of getting those announcements. If you're like, Allea, I'm never interested, or like the schedule doesn't work for me, I live in Australia, please don't tell me about them. Fine. Like, you can get skipped with that. But there I go, talking technical and segmentation, probably much further down the road than you're thinking. But
no. I love this. I love this. And I think actually it nicely takes us back to our 5 reasons why email is the best, because we started with number 1, email is algorithm free and it isn't going anywhere. Number 2, email is fundamental to building long-term relationships. And number 3, what we get to now is the segmentation. So email subscribers can be segmented with personalized messages. And I think for me, there are a couple sides to this. Like, one is what you're speaking to. Like, it allows people to opt out of certain things if they want fewer emails from you, or if there are things you're doing that are just not relevant to them for time reasons or location reasons or whatever. And then also to me, it's like one of the things I love about segmentation is it can let us be these like multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate people we are. And many of the off the grid listeners, I would say, like, do a lot of things. We have people who are like quilters and dancers. We have people who like are technical writers and fan fiction writers, right? Like, they want segmentation so that they can talk about that stuff. But like, you know, maybe your technical writing clients don't actually care about the fanfic that you're writing, and segmentation can really help you distinguish those people. So I'm curious, like, what are your favorite uses of email segments, and like, how do you use them in your own business or with your clients?
Ooh, man, this is a good topic. This is my favorite topic, probably, right? Because adding or removing tags is just super, super powerful, because you get to allow your subscribers to kind of choose their own journey, like their own frequency, the type of content that they want. And you can actually start it as far back as like the actual place where they opt in, right? This sounds super simple, but like, this is important, because if you have like fanfic related landing pages, those people should get tagged with fanfic, right? Like audience:fanfic. All it has to be. I'm all about like a good naming convention. So audience, fanfic. And then you can have audience technical writing, and that is related to other opt-ins, or, you know, maybe it's your client. So as someone becomes a client, you add that tag to them. You can also create like a segment, if you will. So segment would be the term you would use like in ConvertKit or MailerLite. But basically, you can create a pre-built segment that's like anybody with the tag audience fanfic. Like, and you can just have that segment ready to go so that every time you go to email your audience, you don't have to remember, what tag did I give them? What forms am I including? Or if you're like, and I'm excluding people who are currently in a welcome sequence. Like, it's just pre-built, and you have that, and you're good to go. And then you can do something similar if you're running a promotion. So I ran a promotion after a webinar, and it's like, hey, if you're really not interested in the offer, that's fine. Click here to get your, you know, what did I say? To go back to your regularly scheduled programming or whatever. Something cute. It was cuter than that. But then with all the promotional emails, we just know with each of those to exclude the people who have the mute tag. And we're just muting them from that promotion. We're not muting them forever. We're not making promises saying, I would promise to never sell to you again. And I'm like, why do you have them on your list? Either they should be okay with hearing about it, or if you're going to be selling them something completely different, then yeah, maybe go do that with a different audience or a different platform. But yeah, so tagging based on opt-in, but then you can also tag them based on their interactions within your email list. And one way to do that is to ask your subscribers to self-segment within the welcome sequence. So often I'll have one segmentation prompt email, and then this following one will be like a reminder for everybody who didn't click. So what that is for is like, say, yes, multi-passionate creator here. I create a bunch of different things. Click on any of these that are of interest to you, and I'll make sure I send you that content. The downside is that not everyone's going to click. So in a way, you have to determine, okay, if they don't click, what do I send them? Does that mean I send them nothing? And so you just have to be kind of like picky choosy with how much you're using the tags, because you also are now responsible for upholding what people have told you they want or don't want. And that can just get tricky. So for example, I have food bloggers, and it's so funny. I'm like talking people off down the wall every time. I'm like, no, come back. You made it too complicated. What happens? So I have like a food blogger who's like, we've got nut-free, dairy-free, grain-free, egg-free. And she's like, I want to create segments for all of them. And I'm like, such a great heart you have. What difficult execution that will be, right? Because if you're sending like a roundup of 3 recipes and you want to send it to your whole list, but like one is grain-free and one is egg-free and one is nut-free, I'm like, okay, girl, what if you just pick 2? Like gluten-free or vegan or something like that. Like the ones that are like most impactful. And a lot of times you might have substitutions. Like it's not even entirely something you need to like, handle with kid gloves around folks, because they click through the blog post and there's another way to create the meal. And so that being said, you don't have to go hog wild, because it's something that means you have to maintain. So that's where if it's like, yep, I'm into fanfic, or I'm not, or you allow them to opt out after you just start sending them the emails, that'll give you room to make sure that their preferences are known, but it's not going to add like tons of time to your schedule.
I think that this is such an important point, because I see something similar where often if people start to think about segmentation, then they come up with like a million different segments they feel like they should have, so everything can be personalized, and they forget that perhaps they are one human being who is not going to send a million different versions of their emails. And we have to be both, I think, like we have to take care of our audiences and also take care of ourselves in that process. And so for me, I have typically chosen a more like one path, like this is the list for Off the Grid. Everybody who is interested in Off the Grid gets these emails. I have not like segmented farther from that. But sometimes I've been on other small business owners lists, for instance, where I see them do this. They're like, tell me, are you already in business or do you want to be in business? So I can send you more personalized, specific things. And I appreciate when they do that, because I don't need, a bunch of emails about how to start your business. I have already started my business. But I notice it's like they've just picked 2. It's not 20, just 2.
Exactly. So for instance, I have a food blogging client where we asked their audience, where are you as a home cook? Like I'm new, I'm intermediate, I'm advanced. So the new folks got an additional 5 emails to kind of catch them up to speed. Like, this is how you cut up an onion. This is how you cut up garlic.
Mm-hmm.
Also, here's a fun playlist. We hope you enjoy cooking. And then they would join the more general nurture sequence where everybody else went. The important thing is just to make sure you have a default option. So if somebody doesn't click after like 5 days, you just feed them into wherever you want them to go. Kind of make an educated guess.
Yeah, I've noticed even in my own sign up form now for my email, it's amelia.myflowdesk.com, and people can select into, do you want to hear about Off the Grid things? Do you want to hear about Softer Sounds podcast studio things? Or do you want to hear about like Amelia's personal life? Those are my 3 options, because I kind of have 3 lists. But there are all these people who select nothing. Like they put their name and email in and then they don't actually check anything. And so far, I just haven't sent them any emails, because I don't know. I have literally no clue they could want any one of those things. This is not a perfect strategy, obviously, but in fact, it's no strategy. It's me doing nothing. But I think I share it because some of the things I'm noticing is that like the expectations around email are shifting. And people are learning that we want them to opt into things, but that's not necessarily how they think about it to begin with. It's like, I gave you my email address, you're going to email me. But I'm like, no, actually, I want like more consent from you. I want more input from you about what you want. But like, it's going to take time for people to realize that like, that's what we're doing and that's what we hope for and that we want it to serve them, rather than just a blanket sort of like, I gave you my email, send me your promotion, then I'll unsubscribe sort of vibe to email marketing.
Yeah. Can we solve that problem right now?
Oh my God, please.
Let's do it. I need a really cool, I want a super cool superhero name of email problem solver woman, because it's my favorite thing to do. And so But basically, for anybody who completes that form, if you have a workflow associated with just that form or one tag or something that adds them into a workflow, and it's like if they are part of this segment, or this segment, they just exit the workflow. Everyone else who is not part of one of those segments, you just add like the new subscriber tag, and it's great. Or maybe they get a few emails in there saying, hey, I'm so glad you joined my list. Here's what you can learn about the 3 different types of emails I send. Will you do me a favor and click and tell me which ones you want? And then if they still don't have any other segments, you can send that email, just an edited version of it again. And then at that point, and if they don't, then they just get all of them.
Like everything for you.
You get everything. It's like, speak now or you're going to get 3 emails a week.
That's funny. My impulse would be to not send them things, but I'm like, if you haven't opened 2 emails from me already, are you really going to open anything else I send?
Okay,
I don't
fine.
know, but
okay, fine.
But I still
reasonable.
But I love what you're saying because in my head, this is like an unsolvable problem, but you're so right. If I shift how my workflows are set up, I can make a workflow that emails the people who didn't select anything and invites them to select what they want to hear from me. And this is the beauty and the magic of segmentation. And I love this so much. So that also takes us directly to our number 4 reason why email is so important and wonderful for business or for small business owners, which is that email marketing can be automated so that you have systems that support you and you don't have to work as much or as hard in the process of growing your business. So we've already talked about a ton of automations today, right? Like a welcome email or sequence is an automation, the nurture sequence is an automation, setting up these workflows so I can capture people at different stages of interest is automation. But could you talk a little bit more just about like how you approach automation and email marketing and what are some of the areas where you think it is really important?
Yeah, I mean, what we've talked about so far between like sending new emails, having a welcome sequence, and having a nurture sequence, those are like the 3 things that I'm like, if you're going to just do something well and do it consistently, you just do that. I mean, because if you're going to have a welcome sequence, which I suggest you even at least have one, and you start sending out newsletters, why not also have a nurture sequence? That's repurposing the content. So you're like, just do all 3, and so beyond that, like we're getting into much more advanced strategies. So it kind of depends. Like I know as a service provider, and I've done this for clients of mine who are like dietitians or whatnot. So we'll have a link trigger. So if people click to learn more about a service, they get a particular follow-up sequence, more about these nutrition services or something. And it's all because we just tracked a click. And that click is just always being tracked. And then that other workflow is always going to send a follow-up email once that segment or tag gets added to that subscriber. Like that's one way to do it. I have that for some of my emails. Hint, hint. If you click it all to learn about like my services, you're going to get a follow-up email saying, do you want to book a discovery call with me? And then the people who click in that email actually get like another tag that's like hot lead. Like these are the people who not only got this email, but they also clicked, which my plans are foiled because those companies that have firewalls that just click every email, I'm like, this website is not even a real person. Like it's a corporation or whatever. And I'm like, stop clicking in my emails. You're messing with my list. And trust me, I've tried emailing them and they're like, not real. So that's one way to kind of leverage the automations. And then of course there's like sales funnels, right? So being able to introduce people to a webinar or a product, or maybe you have an opt-in that leads to a funnel. Maybe they don't go directly into your welcome sequence. But it's like, oh, they came in for this freebie and now I'm going to pitch them on my paid meal plan or something. What's so cool about that, is once someone purchases, you can stop sending them sales emails, just like you would do with a live launch, because depending on where you're selling the product, you should be able to communicate that with your email platform, whether it's like using, like ConvertKit has products within there. So you can say, as soon as they have purchased this product, be done, and then send them into the welcome sequence. But yeah, other platforms, you might need to use something like Zapier or whatnot.
I use Flowdesk, so I do this using Zapier. So for instance, if I'm selling the interweb, which is Off the Grid's membership, then I have my promotional emails for the interweb. All of them are set up so they send to the Off the Grid list and they exclude interweb members. And when somebody joins the interweb, there's a Zap set up to add them to the interweb member segment. So they stop getting those emails once they have purchased. So yeah, it's like not impossible to set up. You just may need that like extra tool depending on how you sell things.
Yeah. Is that automated or is that part of like live sending that promotion?
Live sending.
You could automate it too. So if you're going to do it in a workflow, you just want to make sure before, give yourself some time after one email sends. So give it like 2 to however many days. And then you have a condition that's like, are they in the segment members? If so, they exit. If not, they get the next email. So that's kind of where you're going to go to segment them out, filter them by email. So like in ConvertKit, you can filter people out of the entire sequence as soon as they purchase, or you can just filter them out of specific emails. So ride with me here. We're going to revisit nurture sequences. So say you have a nurture sequence, you've got a few that promote like a paid, like a membership, right? And so, but you don't want to pull them out of the whole nurture sequence because there's still a lot of great content there, but you can filter them out of that one email. So they just skip that email and go to the next one if they have the tag that they are already a member.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. I think what I'm learning from you is that email is so superhuman.
It's so cool.
It can do everything. And I'm sure we have listeners like me who are like mind blown emoji and like leaning into that. And I'm sure we have listeners who are like, Amelia, I'm about to piece out of this episode. This is so complicated. I can't even send my once a week newsletter. I think I just want to pause there to say, like, again, what's beautiful about email is that it can grow with you. Email can be one email you send to one person, or it can be this advanced sequence you've set up in ConvertKit to remove people from specific emails in your nurture sequence based on their purchasing patterns. Like, it's got such a beautiful spread. And I think that what I'm hearing from you in this conversation, even for me, is just an invitation to up my game with automation because it saves me so much time. Like, I have written so many amazing sales emails over the past 3.5 years in my business. And most of them are just languishing in people's archive or trash folder, right? Like, I never do anything else with them. I never circle them back. Maybe I look when I'm selling again and like rewrite it. But what I'm hearing from you is like, all of that could be working for me in a nurture sequence that I set up over time. It could be more automated so that next time I go to run my sales cycle, I actually am running it from a workflow rather than live writing and promoting these emails over time. I think that sometimes I feel like automation is overwhelming and more work to set up, but I'm just reminded in this conversation that actually it's like just putting to work all of the work I've already done that I just don't do anything with at this point.
Yeah. Well, and like, I don't even have a sales funnel. I don't have an automated one. I've been emailing my list since October 2019, and I send out regular emails. I have a nurture sequence and I have a welcome sequence. That's my trifecta, and it's working for my business, right? Like, I'll write sales funnels or whatever for clients here or there. And I love thinking strategically about like, oh, if this behavior happens, then we can do this and the tool can do that, right? But I'm also like, that is my job, is to be thinking of that for other people. Whereas like, even for my own business, like, this cobbler's kids have shoes, okay? We have shoes. We're sending emails, but like, I'm also a service provider and I'm not even a full-time content creator. So it'd be different if like my whole business was just like sending traffic back to my website or selling e-commerce products. Then that would be where I'd spend a lot of my time. But what has been so cool is like, yeah, I mean, I was writing for my list with these like, I don't know, puny emails is what I'll call them. When I got started, I didn't even have a website yet. Like 6 months into writing emails, I think I actually started adding them to the blog posts, like as blog posts on my website. And so, yeah, like, it's also okay just to be like, this is the minimum. This is the minimum that I want to create, and let that be reasonable. And like I said, some weeks I will skip sending a new email. There have been real stressful, busy times in my life. And especially like before I had a team. Oh gosh, guys, we could talk about a team and how that, like, yeah. I'm not doing this alone anymore. I even just like ran a launch that I was like, if I actually told people how many people went in behind this, I think that would help open the veil of like, oh, she must do it all. I'm like, your girl's doing nothing by herself. Like,
yeah.
I also have a cat. I literally can't do anything alone anymore. So, so also just like be reasonable with yourself. So like I said, I was sending emails for 6 months, I think before I even repurposed them into nurture emails and before I put them on the blog. So yeah, it doesn't all have to happen at once. And it might never all happen.
Yeah, I really appreciate that advice and that pause to kind of pull back the curtain and just be like, these big launches that we're watching happen for different people, they are supported behind the scenes, or they are the only thing that creator is probably doing when they're setting that up. And we need that like context and reminder so that we don't put so much pressure on ourselves to do the most. And then we end up abandoning email altogether.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, here's the thing. I just ran my first launch to my own list, my first webinar. And like, I have been writing emails for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want you to hear that. Like, I have been consistently not even just improving my craft as a person who emails, but like, I've also grown my business. Like, me running a launch with a list of 100 people doesn't make sense when you're trying to make money online. Like, you have to get clients and you serve clients, and that's where your priority has to be. Talking about as a service provider. I'm just going to be real, right? Like,
Yeah.
But what I was able to do over the last 5 years was maintain consistency, develop relationships, show people that I am trustworthy, that I am helpful, that I am recommendable, and like grow my community for the day that I was ready to launch something.
Absolutely.
So it's not an overnight success by any means.
No.
You know?
I completely agree. And I feel like this is something that our mutual friend Michelle Warner talks about a lot, like where sequence is so much of what matters in business. And it's something I talk about a lot on this show of, part of the reason so many of us become service providers first is because that is a way that you can earn a full-time living in your business without needing a huge audience. And so I love everything you just said about being consistent, being recommendable, doing great work. And then over time, once you've built that foundation, many of us do then become course creators or content creators or like shift our business model from one-to-one to one-to-many. But we're not starting with all those one-to-many tactics and offerings when we have an audience of 100 people, because it's just not going to bring in enough money to be that source of full-time income if that's what you want your business to be for you. Hi, Off the Grid listeners. Amelia here, interrupting our conversation today because I want to share with you one of my favorite marketing tools. When I left Instagram, I invited all of my followers to subscribe to my mailing list in order to keep in touch with me. And I promised to send them monthly-ish notes on a lot of the themes I used to talk about on social media. I've used many email service providers in my day, but my favorite of all of them is Flowdesk. Flowdesk is a gorgeous, easy-to-use email service provider. It helps you create beautiful, thoughtful emails, and even better, it's really set up to help you create easy-to-use landing pages so people can join your list, and workflows so you can automate sending messages to folks who sign up through different pages. Flowdesk is how I run all of the welcome sequences and lead magnets at Softer Sounds. It's also how I run the Leaving Social Media Toolkit that you might have downloaded after listening to this podcast. I'm surely not sending those emails out myself manually. Flowdesk is doing all of that auto-magically. If you'd like to give Flowdesk a try, please use my affiliate link below in the show notes. You'll get a discount, I'll get a kickback, and we will all send more beautiful emails together. Again, check out the affiliate link in the show notes. For now, we're going to get back to this episode of Off the Grid.
ConvertKit has this big conference every summer, and I got to speak at the mastermind of all of the other speakers. So first of all, I was like super nervous because I'm like, hi, smallest fish in the room. It's me. Here's my 20-minute talk, and they were all like, first of all, just like flabbergasted because I did this talk on like 7 common mistakes, and like, people were afterwards were like, so I make all 7 mistakes. I was like, oh, well, yeah, we could talk about that. But what I learned from that, and this is what I want the takeaway to be, is that when you're so focused on your craft, someday you look up and people are like, damn, girl, you're good at what you do. And I think that was my first realization of like, I don't have to be all things to all people. I just need to do my thing. Yeah. So like being good at sending emails and providing value, but being a good service provider and be able to own up when I make mistakes or if things didn't go well, like that's all part of the learning process, and how you get to be a business owner 5 years from now is the business owner that had to go through every one of those steps and lessons and insights to get there.
I really appreciate everything you're saying. It resonates so much with my experience around practicing your craft and like sharing what you're doing along the way, but recognizing that this all takes time. So many of the people I talk to on this show have been in business for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 plus years, right? And that cumulative time is why the things they do now look easy and why it seems to work so seamlessly. Like it's the experience, it's the learning. And I think that this is a place where social media has just really distorted our perception of how long things take. And also, I think this is a place where like the virality of social media that does just like skyrocket a few select people into fame really quickly does us a disservice because it makes us think that that will work for everyone, and it just doesn't. Like it's just not the way in most people's experience of growing an audience or building a business works. And I think this takes us, or I'm going to hard pivot into our fifth reason.
You're like, eventually we need to finish this, Allie. Eventually.
No, I love this.
That's fair.
I think that this is taking me to our fifth reason why email is so important. And that is because email creates space for dialogue with your community. And I think that there is something to the fact that when you are so focused on your craft, like when you are heads down doing the work, you still need that input from other people. Like you still need to be telling people what you're doing and hearing back like what's resonating with them. I feel like if you get too heads down, you can go a direction that like actually nobody's following you over there anymore. But there's this piece about email where it's like even when you are focused on your craft, you're still creating that space for dialogue. So I'm curious, like, how do you think about dialoguing with your subscribers over email?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier my roundtable events. And I started doing those January 2022. And I remember my business coach being like, that feels like a lot of work, considering I wasn't making money from my email list. Like, gasp, email marketer not making money. I'm like, yeah, but I'm a high ticket service provider. And the people hiring me at the time were also on the Today Show. Like, they don't have time, right? So, but I was like, even if I'm not making money with the subscribers on my list, I want to know who they are. And I also just had this stinking suspicion, / I knew it was true, is that there are things, like a question or two that each person has, that if they had the answer, would actually be able to take action. And so I was like, how do I answer those questions? And so I started hosting these like live events for free on Zoom to be able to just like tee up different topics, Q&A, getting to know people. And now it's fun because I would have people who come back often. And so it's like the email was a way for us to create a whole other like subset of the community where people could be face to face. So it doesn't always have to be like inbox to inbox. It's like inbox to Zoom. And so that's been really, really sweet. And I've had previous clients come on there and then say really nice things about me. So that's one way of doing it. And then the other is that every year I survey my list. Every year I do it. And when I talk about surveying, I'm not like, how many people are in your household and how much money do you make and what's your zip code? Like, I don't care. Like, what I'm more interested in is what motivated them to come and find me? Like, what were they looking for? And what is their desired outcome? So like, and I'm also not saying, right, because I'm still the managing editor, they don't get to tell me what to do. But, you know, like if there's an overwhelming number of people who have a certain, you know, interest in like how to create a lead magnet, like that's not something I talk about. But like, great, maybe I have a friend come and do a list swap with instructions on how to do a lead magnet. And then she can direct them back to her website where she talks about that. Like, I'm all for it, right? So like I get to use this as an opportunity to listen to people. And I've even had it so like out of all the people who submit the survey, X number will be randomly entered to win a 30-minute strategy call with me. And so even that's more research. I get to figure out what their questions are. Part of the dialogue, even outside of email, hashtag off the grid, would be, I don't even know if people use hashtags anymore. Sorry, Amelia.
I don't know either. I'm too off the grid.
That's like old Justin Timberlake on SNL. That's an old sketch. But I also go to events and I listen for what people are talking about. So that's how I can remain relevant. Because here's the thing, I'm really good at my craft, but if I don't know about the things changing in the blogger space, then I'm going to be so outdated so fast. Like if I don't know what the helpful content update is, or if I don't know that a lot of people's websites have dropped in traffic to a devastating low where they can't pay their bills like they used to, like if I'm not aware of that, then I'm not really serving my audience. Like part of it is like because I have one niche and it is bloggers. I mean, I also work with other people, I do, but that's the space that I pay attention to the most. And then that helps me generate better content and people feel heard. And like, am I getting replies to all of my emails? No, I'm not. And like one of my nurture emails is like, what do you do when no one replies? You're like, you keep creating value because like, that's not necessarily an indicator of success. What I consider an indicator of success, I mean, I've heard this multiple times, but I was at a conference and it was during like post-pandemic. So I had a mask on and we're walking down this hallway and this gal goes, Allie? And I was like, first of all, you knew how to say my name. So I'm like, talk to me, person. And she's like, oh, I'm Kelly. I'm on your email list. And I was like, oh my, what? Like, you know me from my email list? And she was like, yeah. And you should just know that I keep all of your emails in their own folder in my inbox. And I will eventually do everything you've ever taught me.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't replying back to a random email on a Thursday to tell me that. But I have heard that from multiple people, Amelia. And to me, that is the crown jewel of me putting my time and energy into that space. And so like, that's like a real life relationship that happened from my email relationship.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. I feel like there are just so many different ways we measure and mark success. And I've noticed that, often for me, like the marker of a really good off the grid episode is that I will get emails from people. Like they will take the time to go to their computer, find my email address, reach out to tell me they listened to it. And like that is the best. And at the same time, sometimes there are episodes that no one ever emails me about, but I go look at my downloads and I'm like, that's now one of my top 5 episodes. No one said a thing, So it's like, I think we just have to be multifaceted in how we look at metrics and how we feel success and remind ourselves that like sometimes people are going to reach out a lot. Sometimes they're just going to be like doing their own thing at home, but like they saved every single email you sent in one folder and they love them, and this is a nice marker of like, we have to celebrate ourselves regardless. We have to keep sending the emails and we have to celebrate that we sent them and trust that people are reading them and appreciating them.
Oh man. I mean, along that same vein, don't even look at your unsubscribes. That's not helpful. That's how you find out an ex-boyfriend unsubscribed. And you're like, I shouldn't have looked. I don't know why you were on my list that long, but you shouldn't have been. It's fine. So like, yeah. But part of it is like, let the win be the consistency of it. And I know that that's like the least sexy thing to say, but I remember even starting out as a personal finance blogger saying the only way you get to be a 5-year blogger is if you blog for 5 years. You just have to keep doing it. And it's consistency, it's creation, and that's not light work, but the success is in the creation. And when you after you get started and you're consistent, right? Now I can think about things like a launch. Now I can think about things like starting a podcast. Like there is a sequence to things and you don't have to do them all at once.
Yes, exactly. But email is our perfect starting point in this conversation and in like every marketing conversation that I have. Like it all begins with building the email list. So I feel like in this conversation, we have talked through 5 reasons why email is just fundamental for any online business. I want to recap them super quick. So reason number 1 is that email is algorithm free and it isn't going anywhere. If you send an email, it will land in someone's inbox and they will probably have that email address for the next 100 years of their life. So now you're in a relationship. Number 2 is that email builds long-term relationships. And we need that if we are invested in these perhaps more slow growth ways of building our businesses. Number 3 is that email subscribers can be segmented so that you can send personalized messages. We can keep track of people who are into different parts of your work or people who have purchased certain things. We talked about a ton of ways to use segmentation in this episode. So if you're not sure, just listen back like a million times like I'm going to do to try to implement all of Allie's advice. Reason number 4 is that email marketing can be automated so that your systems can do the work for you. And this was definitely one where I feel like, Allie, you gave us so many good ideas and solved some of my email problems. So thank you. I'm really grateful for that. And then reason number 5 is that Email creates space for dialogue with your readers, potential clients, or customers, either by sending emails that people reply to or sending surveys that they can give you feedback and new ideas. Just a great way to continue to be in conversation with folks as you do the work that you do. So I love these 5 reasons. I feel like for the beginners out there, we are just asking you to write a welcome email. Allea has some amazing free resources on that, so they'll be linked in the show notes. For our folks who already have a list but feel like maybe it's not doing what you want it to do, I think automation is a nice next step. You mentioned sending a subscriber survey as a nice next step. Is there any other advice that you would give to the beginners or the advanced emailers that are tuning in today?
Yeah, for the beginners, just start sending the emails. It's so weird. You're like, it's only 35 people. But at some point, like in my weight training, it's like, you are going to lift those 5-pound dumbbells. Like you just are. And eventually you're going to be up to a 12 and a half or whatever they are. And you're going to feel super strong, right? But what you get to do is you kind of get to go through that awkward, like ugly duckling phase, like I did. Please do as I did. Be awkward. And so you're writing the emails that you're like, this has one thing that I want to get across. Just write the thing and send it, because here's the thing. Well, I got a few things, but one is like, by that being in your head and not out in the world, you're depriving somebody of something really helpful or potential connection. You could just end it with a question. Ask people to reply back. Start small, but get started. And it's not about how big your list is. It's that you are developing a new muscle, a new workflow, a place for you to practice speaking your voice through written word, or you could include videos, whatever, but and then speaking to your audiences differently. This is how I wanted to speak to fanfic. This is how I want to speak to the technical writers. But you need to practice that, especially when it comes to marketing. Okay, what does it look like to write a marketing email to the technical writers? So you just got to get your practice in. And the other reason why this is so important is because once you're already creating value for your email list, it is way more fun to grow your list. It's hard to do it the other way around. You're like, why grow my list? They're not getting anything valuable. It's like, great, go create some value. Go tell yourself that it's worth them being on your list because you've already committed to sending valuable content regularly.
For Off the Grid listeners tuning in, it's like, everything you're creating is of value. And what I'm hearing you say, Allea, is like, you have to believe in that for yourself. And I think a big piece of list growth for a lot of folks I talk to is also just like growing your capacity to be comfortable with more people seeing what you're doing and sharing. And that is necessary if you want to have certain types of businesses. So if you're listening to this episode, I assume you're interested in starting an email list or growing your email list. But I'll also just remind you that not every business needs a fancy email list, right? Like if you are a service provider, you can just be hanging out, sending one-on-one emails. It might be nice to have a newsletter for your past clients or keep people up to date on things that you're doing, but not every business needs a big list. So also just be connected with, as Allea and I have talked about, like, where are you at in your journey? What is the intention behind why you have a list? Who is it for? What are you hoping will happen there? And then you can choose your strategies in alignment with that. And I think that's always so important to come back to, instead of just being like, well, I just started my business and now I'm going to set up all of these sales funnels for my like high ticket offerings. Like that strategy doesn't match that type of offering. So like, we don't need to do that.
Right. And part of it is like, you're also going, especially if you're newer, you're also getting familiar with like who it is you're talking to and what your offer actually is and how it actually solves it. So like, if I looked back at my early sales emails, like I'm pretty sure that language was vague, like I didn't really know. And so, but that's part of the growing, and there's room to do that. And there's room to be a little bit messy in the meantime, like do your best work, but what I'm saying is send the imperfect email with who you are, with what you know right now, because it will help someone with where they are right now. And then like when I say send the emails, I'm not saying you don't have to send an email a day. You don't even have to send an email a week. Like you get to choose what consistency is. I would say every other week, probably at a minimum, just to make it a rhythm and to get it into your life. And what that helps with too is if you're doing like a monthly email, it's this massive roundup, like first of all, you're making a lot of work for yourself. And you're also expecting that everybody on your list is going to see that one email. And they're just not going to. So like take some of the load off of yourself and say like, what's the one thing I need to share with my list this week? And like, let that be enough. And like, you put it out into the world. It is no longer yours inside. It's now helping other people. And then you can focus your attention to the next email whenever you write it.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I have one final question for you, which is a question I get all the time, and from folks who are new, especially. I feel like the biggest block in starting a list is picking a platform. And what do you say when that happens? What do you tell people? I'm so curious. Like, they can't pick a platform. How do you help people pick a platform, or do you have like a go-to?
It's just tricky in a lot of ways. And so I refer people to Kit, which is formerly ConvertKit, for so many reasons. And also they have a free newsletter plan. For free, you can have up to 10,000 subscribers, a welcome sequence, and be able to send like newsletters
That's
as much
great.
as you want. And so, and then even then, like it's $29 a month if you want more automations, which is awesome.
Super
And you can sell
affordable.
products. Yeah, it's super affordable. I know that it definitely adds up more the bigger your list gets, but I don't know how many of us are looking to have 100,000 people on our email list. Like, I'm 6 years into business and my list is just over 2,000. So in that case, $30 a month really like saves you a lot of headache. And it also like, yeah, you can sleep at night knowing like my people are being served well. Like I was paying for ConvertKit when I started Ask Allea. When did I start my email list? December of 2016. Like I was paying $30 a month for a hobby because it was not really an investment. I wasn't making it back, but I was learning about blogging and all of that. So yeah, they're my favorite tool as far as functionality goes. Every tool has its blind spots and it's lacking, right? So I usually recommend Kit, but here's what I really recommend is like get into the platform yourself. Like create a free MailerLite account. Create a free ConvertKit account. Because if you're like, this feels like too much, or I don't like how linear Kit feels, like if you're not going to feel comfortable using the tool, you're not going to be using it. There's a reason why I don't recommend MailChimp. First of all, if you have to go build an email like that, or like ActiveCampaign, it's clunky. And so I'm like, that's just hard for me. And I'm like, I would rather you spend your time doing other things than building out a MailChimp email. Yeah. So MailerLite would be the second one that I would check out, but it just takes longer to build. It's like as if Kit and MailChimp had a baby. It's like kind of got the design function of MailChimp, but it's got a lot of like the segments, groups, tagging, all of that you would find in ConvertKit. Yeah, that would be my biggest recommendation is like get in there yourself, look at a few tutorials. And if you're like, this feels super hard, like just don't force it. And here's the thing, you can always migrate to another platform because back to number one, email is algorithm free and it's not going anywhere. You can literally download your list of subscribers and take them with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also doesn't have to be a forever thing. I'd rather that you pick a platform and just start sending emails regularly, get into the habit, build those relationships, and you can always move to a different platform later.
Yes, 100%. Agreed. I always advise people to think about like what's the functionality that you need, and then also like what's your budget for spending. And I loved your tip around like get into the platform and see how it feels, because I think that is such a big piece of it. And to me, that's a lot of why Flowdesk has been successful, because it feels similar to a platform that like a lot of people who are perhaps intimidated by MailChimp or like advanced automation functionality, it makes that feel very easy. Well, Allea, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for talking through everything about email with me, for sharing these 5 reasons why email is so important for online business owners, as well as ways that we can either get our email game started or improve it in 2025. Could you just tell folks where to find you and how to stay connected with you if they want to get on all of your sequences?
Sure. Yeah. So I created a special page just for you guys. So it's Duett with 2 T's, DUETT.co/grid. Like Amelia mentioned, I've got free resources for you there. You can also connect with me if you want to hop on a call. I'm on Instagram mostly just to lurk on memes of cats and whatnot, but you can also DM me there. But yeah, definitely if you want to get on the email list, that is where you're going to get the best content from me, because it is like locked in, ready to go and to send out to you. So I hope that it's just as helpful to you as it has been to my list so far.
Yes, I'm absolutely positive that it is and will be. So thank you again, Allea, so much for your time today. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. I hope you have a few more ideas about email that you can implement this year. And until next time, we will see you off the grid. Thanks for listening to Off the Grid. don't forget to grab your free Leaving Social Media toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. This podcast is a Softer Sounds production. Our music is by Melissa Caitlin Carter of Making Audio Magic, and our logo is by Natelier Studio. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and until next time, I'll see you off the grid and on the interweb.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hey friend, Amelia here. If you made it this far in the episode, I am guessing that you enjoyed my conversation with Allea, and I want to make sure you know that she has a podcast of her own called Happy Subscribers. It goes even deeper into all things email marketing, and if you liked this episode, I think you're going to love it. So head to the show notes to grab the link or open your favorite podcast listening app and type in Happy Subscribers to listen today. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I'll see you off the grid.